What if I told you that overthinking isn't your biggest problem? Think about it. Every time you hesitate, every time you replay the same conversation in your head, every time you wait for the perfect moment, someone else takes the first step. Not because they're smarter, not because they're more talented, but because they understand one simple truth: progress doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from having the courage to move before you feel completely ready. The people who win in life aren't the ones who never feel fear or doubt. They're the ones who refuse to let those thoughts become their identity. So today, we're going to discover why your mind keeps holding you back, how to break free from the cycle of overthinking, and most importantly, how to start winning by taking action instead of waiting for certainty. Let's begin. Have you ever noticed how your mind can convince you that thinking longer is the same as making progress? It feels productive because you're analyzing every possibility, imagining every outcome, and trying to avoid every mistake before you even take the first step. The strange part is that this process often feels responsible. It feels intelligent. It feels like you're preparing yourself for success. But if you've been stuck in the same place for weeks, months, or even years, then it's worth asking a different question. Is all this thinking actually moving you forward, or is it simply keeping you comfortable where you are? Overthinking creates the illusion of control. Your brain believes that if it can predict every challenge, then it can protect you from failure. That sounds reasonable until you realize that life has never worked that way. No one can predict every obstacle. No one can prepare for every unexpected moment. Yet your mind keeps searching for certainty because certainty feels safe. The problem is that certainty is rarely available before action. Most of the answers you're looking for only appear after you begin. Think about the opportunities you've missed simply because you kept telling yourself, "I'll do it when I'm ready." Ready for what? Ready to know everything. Ready to feel zero fear. Ready to guarantee success. Those moments almost never come. Readiness is often created through experience, not before it. The people you admire didn't wake up one day with complete confidence. They developed confidence because they acted while uncertainty was still present. Your brain is designed to protect you, not necessarily to help you achieve extraordinary things. Thousands of years ago, avoiding unnecessary risks increased the chances of survival. Today, your brain still reacts to uncertainty as if it's a threat. Starting a business, speaking in public, changing careers, or even sharing your ideas online can trigger the same protective response. Your heart beats faster, your thoughts race, and suddenly your mind starts generating reasons to wait. It tells you that more research is needed, more preparation is required, or the timing isn't perfect. Notice how convincing these thoughts sound. They don't usually appear as obvious fear. They disguise themselves as logic. They wear the mask of responsibility. Instead of saying, "I'm scared," your mind says, "I'm just being careful." Instead of admitting uncertainty, it claims to be gathering more information. Before long, days become weeks, weeks become months, and opportunities quietly disappear while you're still preparing for a future that never arrives. Overthinking also steals something incredibly valuable: your energy. Every decision consumes mental resources. When you replay the same situation over and over, you're using energy without creating results. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every single day without ever reaching your destination. Eventually, you become exhausted, not because you've accomplished too much, but because you've been carrying unnecessary weight for too long. Mental exhaustion doesn't always come from working hard. Sometimes it comes from thinking hard without acting. There's another hidden danger. The longer you think about something, the more complicated it becomes. A simple decision slowly transforms into a massive challenge because your imagination keeps adding new problems that don't even exist yet. You begin creating fictional conversations, imaginary failures, and hypothetical disasters. Most of these situations never happen, yet your body reacts as if they're already real. Stress increases. Confidence decreases. Motivation disappears. Have you ever noticed that some of your biggest fears vanish the moment you finally take action? That's because reality is usually much smaller than the stories your mind creates. The unknown always appears larger from a distance. Once you step into it, you discover that many of your worries were based on assumptions rather than facts. People often believe successful individuals think less. That's not true. They simply think differently. They don't wait until every doubt disappears. They accept that doubt is part of the process. Instead of asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" they ask, "What can I learn if things don't go as planned?" That single shift changes everything. One mindset searches for reasons to avoid action. The other searches for opportunities to grow through action. Fear itself isn't the enemy. Fear is a normal human emotion. The real problem begins when fear takes control of your decisions without you even realizing it. Overthinking gives fear a microphone. Every extra minute spent imagining worst-case scenarios allows fear to become louder. Eventually, it starts sounding like your own voice. You begin believing those thoughts are facts instead of temporary emotions. Consider how many incredible ideas never become reality because someone kept waiting for certainty. Books remain unwritten. Businesses remain unopened. Dreams remain hidden. Talented people convince themselves they're not ready while someone with less experience but more willingness takes the opportunity. The difference isn't always talent. It's often the decision to move before confidence arrives. Your mind wants guarantees because guarantees eliminate discomfort. Growth, however, has never been built on guarantees. Growth is built on experiments, adjustments, lessons, and persistence. Every meaningful achievement begins with incomplete knowledge. Every expert was once a beginner who knew far less than they do today. Experience filled the gap that endless thinking never could. The irony is that overthinking promises safety while quietly creating regret. It protects you from temporary failure, but exposes you to long-term disappointment. Years later, people rarely regret the risks they took as much as they regret the chances they never gave themselves. They remember the conversations they never started, the opportunities they never accepted, and the dreams they kept postponing because they believed one more day of thinking would finally make them ready. Your greatest obstacle may not be a lack of intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It may simply be the habit of believing that thinking longer will eventually remove uncertainty. But uncertainty isn't a barrier placed in front of success. It's a companion that walks beside every meaningful journey. The sooner you stop treating uncertainty as a signal to wait, the sooner your mind begins to understand that safety isn't found in endless thinking, but in your ability to adapt, learn, and continue moving regardless of what you cannot predict. One of the most dangerous lies we ever tell ourselves is, I'll start when the time is right. At first, it sounds wise. It sounds patient. It even sounds responsible. After all, who wouldn't want to wait for the perfect opportunity? But here's what most people never realize: the perfect moment isn't something you find. It's something your mind keeps inventing so you don't have to face uncertainty today. Think about how often you've delayed something important. Maybe it was starting a business, applying for a new job, beginning a fitness journey, speaking to someone you admire, or sharing your ideas with the world. Every time, there was a reason. You needed more experience. You needed more money. You needed more confidence. You needed better timing. The list always sounded logical, yet months later, those same reasons were still there. Only now they had become even stronger. Waiting feels comfortable because it removes pressure. As long as you're preparing, researching, or planning, you don't have to risk failure. You don't have to hear criticism. You don't have to discover your weaknesses. In your mind, your dream stays perfect because it has never been tested by reality. The moment you take action, however, reality begins giving feedback, and that's exactly what many people try to avoid. The hidden cost of waiting isn't always obvious because it doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates quietly. Every day you postpone an important decision, you lose something you can never recover: time. Time doesn't announce that it's leaving. It simply moves forward while you're convincing yourself that tomorrow will somehow be different from today. Imagine planting two seeds. One person plants immediately, knowing the weather won't always be perfect. The other waits for ideal conditions. Weeks pass, then months. The first seed has already begun growing despite facing rain, wind, and uncertainty. The second seed remains untouched, protected inside the package, exactly the same as the day it was purchased. Protection may preserve potential, but it never creates growth. This is exactly what happens with our goals. Potential means very little without action. The world isn't changed by ideas alone. It's changed by people who are willing to act before everything feels certain. Many brilliant people remain invisible because they keep polishing their plans instead of sharing them. Meanwhile, someone with average talent but consistent action continues moving forward. There's another cost that people rarely notice. Every time you delay something important, you slowly train your brain to associate hesitation with safety. The more often you choose waiting over action, the stronger that habit becomes. Eventually, hesitation stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like your personality. You begin saying things like, "I'm just not the type of person who takes risks," when in reality, you've simply practiced waiting more than you've practiced acting. Confidence doesn't disappear because you're incapable. Confidence fades because unused abilities become difficult to trust. Imagine owning a musical instrument but never touching it for years. Eventually, you begin doubting whether you could still play. The skill isn't completely gone, but your belief in yourself weakens because it hasn't been reinforced through consistent action. Many people believe they need confidence before they begin. In reality, confidence is usually the reward for beginning. Every successful attempt, every lesson learned, every obstacle overcome becomes evidence that you're capable of handling challenges. Without those experiences, your brain has no proof. It continues relying on imagination instead of experience. And imagination often exaggerates danger. Opportunity also has a unique characteristic: it rarely waits. While you're debating whether you're ready, someone else is making the decision you've been avoiding. The promotion goes to another employee. The business idea is launched by someone else. The market changes. The chance to build a meaningful relationship passes by. The timing you were waiting for quietly belongs to someone willing to move first. This doesn't mean you should rush into every decision without thinking. Preparation is valuable. Planning matters. Learning is essential. The problem begins when preparation becomes a permanent destination instead of a temporary stage. There comes a point where additional planning creates diminishing returns. Instead of increasing your chances of success, it simply delays the opportunity to gain real-world experience. Perfection is another reason people wait. They imagine their first attempt must be impressive. They believe every detail needs to be flawless before anyone sees their work. But perfection is an impossible standard because every skill improves through repetition. The first speech won't be your best. The first video won't be your greatest. The first business won't teach you everything. The first attempt exists to give you information that no amount of planning could ever provide. Consider how children learn to walk. They don't spend months analyzing balance, studying movement, or waiting until they're completely confident. They stand, they fall, they adjust, and they try again. If adults approached learning with the same willingness to be imperfect, far more dreams would become reality. Somewhere along the way, we began believing mistakes were evidence of failure instead of evidence of growth. Waiting also creates emotional weight. Unfinished goals occupy space in your mind. Every time you remember the dream you've postponed, a small amount of disappointment appears. Over time, the disappointment can transform into frustration, self-doubt, and even resentment, not because you lacked ability, but because you kept denying yourself the opportunity to discover what you were capable of becoming. There's a powerful difference between patience and procrastination. Patience means continuing to move while allowing results to take time. Procrastination means delaying movement altogether while convincing yourself you're simply being patient. From the outside, they can look similar. Internally, however, they are completely different. One creates momentum, the other creates excuses. Life rarely announces when the perfect opportunity has arrived because perfection was never the requirement. Most meaningful moments begin feeling ordinary. A conversation, a decision, a single application, one video uploaded, one phone call made, one small step taken despite uncertainty. Looking back, these ordinary moments often become the turning points that reshape an entire future. The cost of waiting is never measured only by what you failed to accomplish. It's also measured by the person you never had the chance to become during all the time you spent standing still. Every day of action teaches resilience, discipline, adaptability, and courage. Every day of hesitation strengthens doubt, fear, and the habit of postponing what matters most. Most people believe they need clarity before they take action. They tell themselves, once I know exactly what to do, then I'll begin. It sounds logical because we naturally want certainty before making important decisions. But life doesn't usually work that way. The truth is that clarity is rarely found by sitting still and thinking harder. Clarity is created by moving. Action has a way of revealing answers that endless thinking never can. Imagine standing at the edge of a dark road at night. You can't see the entire journey ahead of you. The headlights of your car only illuminate a short distance, yet that's enough to keep driving. As you move forward, more of the road becomes visible. Life follows the same principle. You don't need to see the entire path before taking the first step. You only need enough vision to begin. Every step forward uncovers the next one. The problem with overthinking is that it convinces you that more information will solve your uncertainty. Sometimes information is valuable, but beyond a certain point, it becomes another form of delay. You continue reading books, watching videos, asking for advice, and making plans, hoping that eventually every doubt will disappear. But no amount of preparation can replace the lessons that come from real experience. Think about someone learning how to swim. They can study techniques, watch instructional videos, and understand every scientific principle behind floating. They might become an expert in swimming theory, but until they enter the water, they still don't know how to swim. The water teaches lessons that books cannot. Action transforms knowledge into understanding. Many people remain trapped because they confuse thinking with progress. At the end of the day, they feel mentally exhausted and assume they've accomplished something meaningful. In reality, nothing has changed because no action was taken. The plan remains on paper. The dream stays inside their imagination. Their circumstances are exactly the same as they were yesterday. Action interrupts this cycle. The moment you begin, your mind shifts from imagining possibilities to responding to reality. Reality is far more useful than imagination because it provides feedback. Feedback tells you what's working, what isn't working, and what needs to improve. Without feedback, you're simply guessing. Every successful entrepreneur understands this principle. Businesses rarely succeed because the original plan was perfect. They succeed because the founders launch, observe, adjust, improve, and continue adapting. The first version is almost never the final version. The same applies to almost every meaningful goal in life. Your first attempt exists to gather information, not to prove perfection. Consider how many inventions changed the world through repeated experimentation rather than flawless planning. Every failure provided valuable data. Every mistake eliminated one ineffective approach. Progress wasn't created because someone had perfect clarity from the beginning. Progress happened because they kept moving despite incomplete knowledge. Action also changes your emotional state. When you're overthinking, your attention remains focused on potential problems. Your imagination creates worst-case scenarios that feel incredibly real. Once you start acting, your attention naturally shifts towards solving actual problems instead of imaginary ones. Your energy moves away from fear and toward progress. Notice how differently you feel after completing even a small task you've been avoiding. Before starting, your mind often makes the task seem enormous. Once it's finished, you wonder why you waited so long. The challenge itself wasn't as overwhelming as the anticipation. Overthinking magnified the difficulty, while action reduced it to something manageable. Small actions are especially powerful because they create momentum. Momentum is one of the strongest forces in personal growth. The hardest part of almost any journey is beginning. Once movement starts, continuing often becomes much easier. One completed task encourages another. One successful conversation builds confidence for the next. One workout makes tomorrow's workout feel more natural. Your brain responds positively to evidence. Every time you take action, you provide your mind with proof that you're capable of moving despite uncertainty. That evidence slowly replaces self-doubt. Confidence isn't built by positive thinking alone. It's built by collecting experiences that demonstrate your ability to handle challenges. Many people wait until they feel motivated before taking action. Unfortunately, motivation is unpredictable. Some days it's strong, other days it disappears completely. If your progress depends entirely on motivation, your results will always be inconsistent. Action, however, has an interesting effect. It often creates motivation after you begin. Starting generates energy. Progress creates excitement. Accomplishment strengthens commitment. Think about writers who produce books consistently. They don't wait for inspiration every morning. They sit down and begin writing. Some days the words flow easily. Other days they struggle. But because they act consistently, inspiration often appears during the process rather than before it. The same principle applies to athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, and anyone pursuing meaningful goals. There's also something important about mistakes. People fear making them because they assume mistakes are evidence of failure. In reality, mistakes are information. They reveal weaknesses you couldn't have identified through thinking alone. They highlight areas for improvement. They expose assumptions that were incorrect. Without mistakes, and growth becomes almost impossible because you never receive accurate feedback. Imagine trying to improve your aim without ever throwing a ball. No amount of visualization can tell you how accurate your throw actually is. The first throw gives you information. The The second throw becomes slightly better because you've learned something. Improvement happens because action continuously supplies new data. Another reason action creates clarity is that it separates genuine obstacles from imagined ones. Before starting, your mind creates a long list of potential problems. After beginning, you often discover that many of those problems never existed. Some challenges appear easier than expected. Others require creative solutions you couldn't have imagined beforehand. Either way, reality becomes far more reliable than speculation. People who consistently achieve meaningful goals don't possess magical certainty. They simply trust that they'll figure things out along the way. They understand that intelligence isn't measured by having every answer immediately. It's measured by the ability to adapt when new information appears. Flexibility becomes more valuable than perfect planning. Every meaningful journey contains uncertainty. Every worthwhile dream includes moments where the path isn't completely visible. Waiting until uncertainty disappears means waiting forever because uncertainty is part of growth itself. The people who continue progressing aren't those who eliminate uncertainty first. They're the ones who develop the habit of moving through it. When you stop demanding complete clarity before taking your first step, something remarkable begins to happen. Decisions become easier because experience replaces assumption. Fear becomes smaller because reality replaces imagination. Confidence becomes stronger because evidence replaces doubt. Direction becomes clearer because movement reveals possibilities that standing still could never uncover. One of the biggest reasons people stay stuck is because they're waiting for certainty. They want to know that every decision will work out exactly as planned. They want guarantees before they take risks. They want proof that they won't fail, be judged, or regret their choices. It sounds reasonable because certainty feels comfortable. It gives us the illusion that everything is under control. But the truth is, certainty is one of the rarest things in life, and waiting for it often becomes the greatest obstacle to personal growth. Think about every major decision you've ever made. Choosing a career, starting a relationship, moving to a new city, launching a business, or learning a new skill. Were you ever 100% certain about the outcome? Probably not. There were questions you couldn't answer. There were risks you couldn't eliminate. Yet life continued moving forward because eventually you had to make a decision despite the unknown. Many people believe confidence comes first and action comes second. They imagine confident people wake up every morning feeling fearless, prepared, and completely sure of themselves. But confidence doesn't usually arrive before the challenge. It develops because of the challenge. Every difficult situation you overcome becomes evidence that you're stronger than you once believed. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. No one starts with perfect balance. At first, every movement feels uncertain. You wobble, lose control, and sometimes fall. If someone waited until they felt completely confident before getting on the bicycle, they would never learn. Confidence wasn't hiding somewhere waiting to appear. It was built through repeated attempts, mistakes, adjustments, and persistence. This pattern repeats itself throughout life. Every skill follows the same path. Every successful person begins as a beginner. Every expert was once uncertain. The difference isn't that successful people experience less fear. The difference is that they refuse to let uncertainty become a permanent excuse. Your brain naturally prefers certainty because certainty reduces stress. When everything feels predictable, your mind relaxes. But growth almost always lives outside that predictable environment. Every promotion requires responsibilities you've never handled before. Every meaningful relationship asks you to become vulnerable. Every business demands decisions with incomplete information. Every dream requires stepping into situations where no guarantees exist. This is why so many people remain inside their comfort zones. The comfort zone provides familiarity. It protects you from embarrassment, disappointment, and temporary failure. But it also protects you from discovering your true capabilities. Comfort may feel safe today, but over time it often becomes a prison built from familiar routines and repeated excuses. The interesting thing about confidence is that it behaves more like a muscle than a personality trait. Muscles become stronger through resistance. Confidence grows the same way. Every time you face discomfort, instead of avoiding it, your confidence becomes slightly stronger. Every difficult conversation you have, every challenge you accept, every fear you confront becomes another repetition that strengthens your ability to trust yourself. Many people misunderstand what confident individuals actually think. They assume confidence means believing you'll always succeed. Real confidence is something entirely different. It's believing that even if things don't go according to plan, you'll find a way to respond. It's trusting your ability to adapt rather than trusting that life will always be easy. This distinction changes everything. When your confidence depends on perfect outcomes, every obstacle feels devastating. But when your confidence depends on your ability to learn, every obstacle becomes an opportunity to become stronger. Failure no longer defines you because failure becomes part of your education rather than your identity. Think about children learning something new. They ask questions without worrying about looking foolish. They try repeatedly without expecting perfection. They don't assume one mistake means they'll never succeed. Somewhere along the journey into adulthood, many people begin believing mistakes are proof they aren't good enough. Instead of viewing mistakes as teachers, they treat them like judges. The fear of uncertainty often comes from imagining that one wrong decision will permanently ruin your future. While some decisions certainly carry serious consequences, most choices are far less permanent than your mind suggests. Life is remarkably flexible. You can change direction. You can learn new skills. You can correct mistakes. You can rebuild after setbacks. The future isn't shaped by one perfect decision. It's shaped by your willingness to keep adapting. Confidence also grows through keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and actually follow through, your mind collects evidence that you're reliable. Maybe it's waking up earlier, finishing a project, exercising regularly, or having a conversation you've been avoiding. These actions may seem small individually, but together they build an internal reputation. You begin trusting yourself because you've repeatedly proven that your words lead to action. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. Every time you constantly postpone your goals, break your own commitments, or avoid necessary challenges, your self-trust slowly weakens. Your mind notices the pattern. It becomes harder to believe in yourself because your actions no longer support your intentions. This isn't about punishment. It's simply how confidence develops. It grows through consistency. There will always be uncertainty ahead. No successful entrepreneur knows exactly how every customer will respond. No athlete knows the outcome before the competition begins. No author knows how readers will react to a new book. No leader knows every challenge their team will face. Yet they continue making decisions because waiting for complete certainty would prevent any meaningful progress. One of the greatest mindset shifts you can make is replacing the question, how can I become certain, with a different question, how can I become more capable? Those are two completely different goals. Certainty depends on the future behaving exactly as you expect. Capability depends on your ability to handle whatever the future brings. Capability is something you can develop every single day. Every skill you learn increases it. Every obstacle you overcome strengthens it. Every uncomfortable experience expands it. As your capabilities grow, your need for certainty naturally decreases because you stop depending on perfect conditions. Instead, you begin trusting your own resourcefulness. People who accomplish extraordinary things aren't people who eliminated uncertainty from their lives. They're people who accepted uncertainty as the price of growth. They stopped demanding guarantees before taking action. They recognized that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite fear. Every challenge became another opportunity to strengthen their confidence, not because success was guaranteed, but because each experience proved they were becoming more resilient, more adaptable, and more prepared for whatever came next. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions a human being can experience. It has protected us for thousands of years, helping us avoid danger and survive difficult situations. Fear itself is not the problem. In fact, without fear, we would make reckless decisions and ignore real risks. The problem begins when fear starts controlling every choice we make. Instead of becoming a signal to pay attention, it becomes a barrier that prevents us from moving forward. Many people spend years trying to eliminate fear from their lives. They believe that once they stop feeling afraid, they will finally have the courage to chase their dreams. But courage has never been about the absence of fear. Courage has always been about choosing to act even when fear is present. The people you admire most are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear become the author of their story. One of the most effective ways to reduce fear is to replace it with something stronger than itself, purpose. A purpose gives your actions meaning. It reminds you why the journey matters in the first place. Fear constantly asks, what if I fail? Purpose asks, what if I never try? Those are two completely different conversations happening inside the same mind. The question you choose to focus on determines the direction of your life. Imagine two people standing at the edge of a stage before giving a speech. Both feel nervous. Both have racing hearts. Both are worried about making mistakes. The first person focuses entirely on themselves. They wonder if people will judge them, criticize them, or laugh at them. The second person focuses on the audience. They think about the message they want to share and the lives they might impact. Their fear hasn't disappeared, but their purpose has become louder than their anxiety. Purpose changes the meaning of discomfort. Without purpose, every obstacle feels unnecessary. With purpose, obstacles become part of something meaningful. And an athlete doesn't enjoy every exhausting workout because the workout itself is pleasant. They endure it because they understand what it leads to. A parent doesn't wake up in the middle of the night because it's convenient. They do it because love gives those sacrifices meaning. Purpose transforms effort into investment. When your life lacks a clear purpose, fear easily fills the empty space. Every challenge appears larger than it really is because there's no compelling reason to face it. Small obstacles become overwhelming. Minor setbacks feel permanent. But when you have a meaningful reason for moving forward, your perspective begins to shift. You stop asking whether the journey is easy and start asking whether it's worthwhile. Another powerful strategy for overcoming fear is focusing on small wins instead of giant victories. Many people become overwhelmed because they only think about the final destination. They imagine climbing an entire mountain in a single leap. Naturally, the challenge seems impossible. But mountains are never climbed in one step. They are climbed through thousands of small, consistent movements. Your brain responds positively to progress, even when that progress is small. Every completed task sends a message that says, you are capable. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your belief that you can handle greater challenges. Confidence doesn't suddenly appear after one extraordinary achievement. It grows quietly through hundreds of ordinary victories. Think about someone learning to play the piano. If they focus only on performing a complex concert piece perfectly, they will probably become discouraged.